Welcome to the Tone Lounge Podcast, the definitive music industry and gear podcast with Jonathan Gilmet and Frank Fleckenstein.
What's up, guys, and welcome to the Tone Lounge Podcast. I'm Frank, I'm your host, and with me today, again, as always, my wonderful co-host, the Duke of Voxington, Jonathan Gilmet. Hello, sir. How are you doing at this time? So, since you're in Edmonton, that means that your day is like halfway through right now.
Yeah, it's we're going on 1 p.m. So
yeah, exactly. While here it's kind of late, so yeah, time differences, and we had a little bit of an issue getting our son to sleep. It's actually still ongoing, so yeah, that's why there was a little delay in me joining. However, I'm really excited. I was really looking forward to this episode and recording this episode for a couple of reasons. A, it's episode number 30. So you could say we've left our 20s. And like every time this podcast is becoming more grown up, more wise and adult and all this shit.
Yep.
So that's happening. That's great. And the topic for this episode is, and I'd like to kind of set the tone for this a little bit. In quite a few episodes, we have been talking a lot about the industry, and that the industry is in sort of a bad shape right now, purely from like an economic standpoint. Sales are declining. We talked a lot about stores and operations going bankrupt, and shutting down. And it's not a local thing. It's kind of a global thing that's happening right now. We see it. I mean, we saw the recent, shutting down of Sam Ash in the US. We saw Just Music in Berlin, which was once a huge operation with 4 locations all over Germany. And a couple of others. I think I've recently heard that an operation in Belgium has shut down as well. That also had like multiple locations. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's not great. And then those of you who have listened or watched those episodes were like, well, what do these guys know? What are they even talking about? So that's why today we are actually going to look at some actual numbers, to back up the things that we talked about, because we get our information from people we know in the industry. Me, because I'm well connected. I'm working and I'm MI for a very long time. You, because you're a lot in touch with brands, that send you stuff for review. And you get your information because you're well connected on that end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do is we're going to look at 2 issues of a magazine that's called Music Trades, which up until recently I had a subscription to. It's sort of an inside MI magazine that kind of looks at data that's public, data that has been published by some of the stores, some of the bigger operations. They also reach out to stores to talk about the current situation. And from what I understood over the years, a lot of stores are very open to share their experiences, their current, goings-ons. And so, yeah, we're going to take a look at that. And maybe at the end of the episode, everybody who doesn't get the full picture is sort of better informed and kind of, knows, looking at things on like more graphical, has a better understanding of what's really going on.
Yep.
Any questions before we start?
On my part, how far down the rabbit hole can we go in 1 hour?
To be honest, if this episode takes more than an hour, that's fine with me. I have an hour 20. I have an hour 20. So if we break with the hour rule, then that's fine, because I think it's a very important topic. And I've beforehand I've kind of looked and read through the two issues and kind of highlighted some of the things that I wanted to touch on because they're like key points to look at. So let me do some screen sharing so we can all look at this together. Okay, we're gonna start. So can you see? Let me scroll up. Can you see that?
Yep.
Perfect. So this is the Music Trades 2023 sales data issue, and that focuses on international. So it's taken account all the regions of the world. And let me just read the intro, because there's already a lot of valuable information here. This report ranks 327 of the world's leading music products retailers by revenue. The roster includes businesses operating in 58 countries and on 5 continents. While it is not a comprehensive list of all retailers, those ranked account for approximately 70% of the industry revenues outside of the US. The US market is excluded from this report. However, a ranking of the largest 100 retailers worldwide does include leading US companies. So, as the US market, they always look at the US market more specifically, because obviously that's a US based magazine. So they have a different view. They have more insights into what's happening in their own country.
Yeah.
And then one thing, because we're always talking almost dark skies and the industry is falling down. There's an interesting number here where if you look at it, you might think it's not all that bad. What's going on? It says retailers included in this ranking collectively had 2023 revenues of 7.36 billion, down 0.7% from 2022. We think 0.7%, it's all fine, it's all good. However, as we'll find out, a few things have happened and made a couple of shifts, which is why we see a lot of operations shutting down. So, the established retailers of Europe, North America, and Japan are well known. In developing countries like South America, Africa, and much of Asia, though uncovering the top retailers is an ongoing process, which is true, because not everybody is, telling the world, hey, I just opened a store in Lima, Peru, or I just opened a store in, Paraguay, wherever they're located. So it's obviously difficult. And then regarding Asia, let's say the Chinese government is not really keen on sharing insights of how some of their branches are doing, some of the industries. Qualitatively and quantitatively, music products.
Don't hurt yourself.
I was about to. Music products retail takes a multitude of different forms around the world. The roster includes several brick-and-mortar chains like Long & McQuaid, those are your guys in Canada, that addresses the entire Canadian market with 98 stores, and Shimamura of Japan with 180 stores. However, 166 out of 327 retailers on this list conduct business from a single location, and only a small minority operate more than 5 locations. So we have a few guys who are spread all around the country, and a couple of guys who just work on one location, maybe because they centralize their business, maybe because they're very well organized in shipping stuff all across the globe. Different reasons. And one thing that stands out here, obviously, while we're talking about single locations, at 1.745 billion, thomann of Germany is the largest retailer on the list, but there are also 32 operations with revenues under 2 million. So you take a list with the top 100 retailers of the world, and at the top, you have a guy who's like going towards 2 billion in revenue. And then you're going down the list, and some people just make under 2 million. Just a fraction of what thomann makes, which gives you an idea of like how this tree of the market comes together.
Yeah.
Retailers report that inventories are still somewhat elevated, but orders were being filled on a timely basis. The less good news is that the consumer demand in most of the world has settled back to 2008 levels, well below COVID peak. Sales growth was hard to come by in 2023, even accounting for mid-single-digit price increases in most product categories. 201 of the 327 listed retailers posted flat or declining sales. So that's the majority. Majority of people were losing in comparison to 2022, where we still had that last bit of the COVID peak. People still spending money on stuff before going back to spending money on, travel and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Do you mind if we just take a moment, because I think 100%. There's something to unpack there. So before COVID, things were going a certain way with the industry where it was starting to decline. And then all of a sudden we have this peak during COVID where all of a sudden sales start to go up. Mm-hmm. One of the main factors for that is people being at home and a lot of people wanting to take up an instrument. There's a lot of people out there that would love to play an instrument. They just can't seem to find the time, right?
Yes.
So a lot of adults ended up purchasing instrument, and this peaked for quite a while. So the industry knew that this was like one of those X factors, a thing that doesn't occur all the time. Mm-hmm. So they jumped on it. A lot of people filled their warehouses filled with guitars, amps, pedals, all the stuff you need to be playing. Mm-hmm. But knowing this wouldn't last, now the sales start to go back down because people don't have the same amount of time to practice and dedicate to music.
Yes.
So if you look at the stores, a lot of them have a lot of gear that is just sitting there and they need to get rid of it. But there's not as many consumers to purchase said gear. And a lot of us, like people that have been playing for a long time, we have rooms filled with gear. We don't need more gear.
Yes.
So one of the impacts of this is that everyone was trying to capitalize on as much cash as they could make, knowing that it wasn't sustainable. And now we're back at those 2018 prices, or more like it's flattened out or it's starting to go down. But something else added to the equation, which is inflation. So all the prices started to go up on everything, on food, on gas, on rent, and employment in certain places is very hard to get.
Yes.
So if you take all of this into account, we are, in a sense, in a worse position than we were in 2018, because now we had all the devastation from COVID that's starting to pop up, and we're starting to see the ramifications of COVID.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was fun for them while they could make the money, but now people are not in the same situation. They're not at home. They're not spending all this like free money that they have. Now they have to be more they're more into like self-preservation at this point, because they're thinking,
yes,
I need to put money on the table. I don't need another guitar. So I just wanted to put this precedence there, because as we go forward with what's happening currently, we have to keep in mind, yeah, okay, they're losing money, but why are they losing money? And the situation for most people has changed drastically in the last 4 years.
Exactly. 100%. I agree with everything you said. And obviously, the capacity to spend money on things that you just want to buy because you want to have them varies a little bit by region. It varies, obviously. It has to do with your income. We saw that especially inventory that was more in the high end tier still was getting purchased. There were some retailers that specialize in high end or vintage. That stuff was still sold because people who have money are going to spend it, anyways. It's the low and mid price sector and the stuff that sits a little bit above that was suffering the most, because that is being bought by regular people, with regular jobs, and they don't have big bank accounts. And when I say regional, obviously there is also a difference when it comes to, there are cultural differences in spending. I can tell you that in Europe, for example, and because I am part of that European culture, before you purchase anything, you kind of look into, okay, what's coming in the next couple of months? And then you'll see, okay, I can buy the guitar now, it's going to be fine. Whereas in other regions, we see that the spending on things, because, I have the money, I can spend it, I want to spend it on something to, enjoy myself, is some sort of more liberal. It's more like, let's have a good time, buy the amp, buy the pedal, whatever. So there are obviously some differences. It further goes into the topic of online retailers versus brick and mortar. And one thing we can see pops up immediately, like one of the prime beneficiary of this trend, like online retailers continue to grow, has been Musikhaus Thomann, which serves the entire European market from one location in Germany. The online giant saw 2023 revenues increase 130 million to 1.735 billion, a gain that exceeded the annual revenues of all but the 10 largest retailers on the list. Which is like, what? Yeah.
Crazy.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And then, it further goes into the continuing consumer preference for shopping online places tremendous pressure on brick and mortar operations. For those people who don't know the term brick and mortar, is usually store, or they're also called mom and pop stores. Usually, there's this tradition of a family-driven business. The dad has a music store. Maybe he even has two, depending on if he was able to kind of scale the operation. Mm-hmm. And but those kind of traditionally do not have an online presence, and some of them up to this day, although in this day and age it would be important to have some sort of online presence, they're still hesitant, to jump on that ship because they still think that the real value sits in local business and good customer service, which is the case in a lot of examples.
Yep.
But so faced with stagnant or declining revenues, they are forced to trim staff and reduce inventory, diminishing the consumer appeal of their stores in the process. It leads to a vicious downward spiral that shows little sign of letting up. While every retailer today has some type of online presence, as I just said, either through a proprietary website or using an online marketplace, gaining traction online has been difficult for many brick and mortar sellers. The skill sets required for the two disciplines differ significantly. The estimates below are for all music products. Some categories, like acoustic pianos, products destined for school music programs, and audio gear for installation, favor brick and mortar outlets. For electronic music, recording gear, accessories, and guitars, though, online sales now account for well over 50% in Europe, Japan, Korea, and North America. Essentially, there is a tendency to buy certain things online because it's just more convenient, it's easier, and you don't have a store around the corner that, stocks all the stuff that you would like to test and eventually buy. And yeah, I mean, you wouldn't buy an acoustic piano online, it's like...
Probably not. But one thing I would like to speak to this that maybe some of the audience doesn't really know. So here in North America, we don't have the same kind of reach in terms of online purchase as you do in Europe. So the 4 years I spent in Europe, I go on the thomann website, I'm looking at something, I go, cool, I'm going to buy it. 2 days later, I have it. They have a return policy. If I don't like it, I can just send it back. So there's an immediacy to a purchase online because Europe, everything, like everyone's stuck together. So transporting something from Germany to Belgium doesn't take that long. Here in Canada, we have a country that's as big as Europe. So if I order for something here in Alberta from I don't know, Ontario, it can take sometimes up to 2 weeks before I have it. So that urge of buying something online, we're way more hesitant to do so because we're not rewarded with it right away. So the return policy on that would be extremely long. So if we purchase something, we have a tendency to really research the product, maybe go to a local music store, get something that's similar that we can try out before we can buy it. While in Europe and some of those other places, since everything is so close together, buying something online doesn't mean the same thing for the consumer.
Yes.
And this might explain in part the success of thomann because they have this reach that other people don't have. Okay, we're in Germany. You're almost like right in the center of Europe. So if you want to send it to France, you want to send it to, Austria, anywhere. I mean, everything is close. So,
and I can tell you that their logistics system is top notch. And I've been there. I've made the tour. While I was working for Positive Grid, they invited us. They gave us the tour of like the entire thing, and it's just. It is so streamlined. It's unbelievable. And I mean, we are talking about a couple of 10,000, if not more than 100,000 products, and it's all super optimized. And they did it well, and they're still growing. So what's interesting, so below that, there is this online market share by region, and you have these like always these funny looking cakes. And what's interesting is, so looking at like globally, brick and mortar still makes up for 62%, while online makes, well, here it says, this has to be a typo. It's not 386%.
It doesn't make sense.
38. No. Yeah, it's 38. But then if you break that down, so I was surprised to see that brick and mortar still accounts for 56%. In the US, or in North America, which I was kind of unexpected, to be honest. I thought it would have been lower by now.
I think that kind of goes hand in hand with what I was talking about earlier, where we don't have this mega corporation that can just send and expedite stuff to everybody over North America and South America. We don't have that, so. Maybe there's still a need for mom and pop shops, local music stores, because they don't have someone that can come in and just sweep the floor with all those companies. While if we look at the Europe pie chart, it's quite the inverse of what's going on in North America, maybe in due part to a company like thomann that can just sweep the floor with all the mom and pop shops and service people with great prices. They have great service. Even if you're online, you're buying, they're like, hey, don't worry. If you don't like it, just send it back to us. We'll send you another one.
Exactly. And that's something. And just to round it up, if we look at Africa and South America, and the fact that online only makes up for 13%, I've done some research on Africa. I'm very familiar with South America. So this just has infrastructural reasons. Some of these countries are not as developed as some of the Western countries, A, and B, even if they're developed, they just do things in a very sort of old-fashioned way, especially in South America. If I look at Chile, the infrastructure for shipping stuff around is like very basic. It's like it's one service. It's super monopolistic. It's super expensive to ship stuff around, and so that's why nobody does it. So, they go to the next big city and they go to the store they know, or if they make a trip to the capital, they visit the stores that they want to visit and test stuff and eventually buy stuff. So
yeah.
That's something to round up the thomann thing. So thomann, for example, represents 42% of the total revenues of all European retailers listed. That's not the total list, because some companies don't publish the numbers, some don't want to. So, and its 8% sales gain came at their expense, obviously. Absent thomann, aggregate revenues for the other retailers in the region declined 3.5%. So there you go.
Yeah.
Then, well, for obvious reasons, Russian retailers suffered a turndown of similar magnitude. Global sanctions, challenges securing imports, and economic strife caused by the war with Ukraine have eroded the sale of all discretionary hard goods, musical products included. Russian retailers included in this ranking posted an aggregate 34.2% decline, which is,
that's massive.
It's pretty massive. And when you see the list, there's some countries where I'm like, but we'll find out in a second. Same thing. Talking about South America, we still have a couple of countries with very unstable governments and weird economic policies. Some of them were suffering from heavy inflation. So Chile had an inflation that was just absolutely brutal and drove the prices up for things that sometimes triple the price for some of the stuff.
Yeah.
So, not great. And here is a little list with some snapshots, and I kind of pointed out the ones that were, sort of shocking in a way. So, if you look at that list, Australia minus 13.5 revenue change. Belgium minus 31.8.
That's crazy.
That's a lot. But then again, that might have had to do with the fact that this chain closed down its business.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the name was. Was Key Music maybe? Might have been Key Music. And then below that, you look at like Bolivia and you see like minus 25%, but you also see there's only one retailer in Bolivia. So if that guy has a shitty year, or like Bulgaria, for example, minus 27. It's only one retailer. I've been to this guy. It's a guy that is a distributor, and he also owns pretty much all the important stores, the ones that make actual money. So if this guy has a bad year, everything looks kind of shitty.
Yeah.
What other examples? Oh yeah, we have Russia minus 34.2, which is huge. And then there are obviously some results by region where we look at, North America pretty much flat, South America minus 4.4, Europe with a slight increase, but I would still consider that, flat in a way. Asia minus 11.4, which is it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Australia minus 3, Africa small increase. So globally, not that great. And then if you look at the top 100 retailers of the world, and those include the ones that are located in the US. So we still have Guitar Center as like the biggest when it comes to revenue. And so everybody who's not watching this as a video and listening to it right now, whenever we say revenue, that's actual sales. That doesn't mean that money ends up in your pocket or on your bank account as a business. That's how much was sold. the actual earnings of all that is probably a lot lower, especially if we consider the very low margins in this industry. So even if like Guitar Center has like this massive number, or thomann has this massive number, doesn't say that a lot of that money, actually went to their bank accounts. That's a different question, and that's obviously something that they will not reveal for several reasons. But the Canadian guys had a good year, plus 5.4%. Who had a bad year? Parsons Music in Hong Kong. Yeah, okay. Minus 25. Sam Ash, but that has been liquidated. So those are 2023 numbers where they were still running. Music Store, those are my guys. They're just 4 kilometers away from here, almost minus 15, which is quite a lot. And then we look at Ishibashi with a whopping plus 32.2. And Ishibashi, I know that pretty well. Those guys, they are very invested in used inventory. So, and that makes their entire assortment very sort of unique. And they're selling a shit ton of stuff globally, because, the Japanese market is huge. They take in a lot of the used stuff and they ship it all across the globe, which is probably one of the reasons they're pretty well off. Apparently. So there are examples on both ends. We have a couple of guys who had a really good year, and we had a few guys that had a really shitty year. And the list goes down to like 100. And let's see. Oh, then it's broken down by actual stores, and then obviously by country. And then you can see some of the country numbers, but we've been through that. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Germany, Greece, Japan, Netherlands, Nigeria. One retailer.
Yeah.
Productivity, consumption levels. Yeah. So, that is just to kind of set the tone for the next issue we're going to look into, because that's the US one. That's the US one from the second quarter. And that one is if I don't want to reveal too much, but it's kind of a shit show.
and before we get there, I just want to break a bit of this concept apart, because we're looking at numbers, and you said something really interesting earlier. You said the revenue is not what they put in their pockets, it's what they sold. Mm-hmm. And anyone that works in music stores will know that when you get that Gibson on the wall, and then you have a beginner guitar on the wall, in terms of which one is going to put more money in your pocket, surprisingly, it's not the Les Paul. So there are guitars like that sell for a lot of money, and you would think that the store would make a killing with these instruments, saying, I got Gibsons, I got Fenders, I have the high-end Ibanez guitars and all that. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the profit margin, how much goes back into their pockets once they paid the location, they paid the hydro bills, they paid their employees, they paid for insurance, they paid for everything, because they got bills like everybody else. What is left in their pockets after everything's been paid? And often the money is not made on the Gibson. It's not made on the Mesa amps. It's made on guitar strings, stuff like that, where they can buy in volume and sell and get a bit of profit. So if we look at these numbers, sometimes we go, oh, wow, man, like, I don't know, they sold for $200 million last year. Yeah, maybe, but how much of that went back in their pockets once they paid for everything? And we don't know what their debt looks like either.
Exactly.
Because sometimes these companies have to borrow money to fill in the stores with more equipment, but sometimes they keep putting themselves in more debt just so that they keep up the appearance of doing well economically. And we never really address this, but we should, because they're not the only ones doing this. We have also the builders, people who build guitars, who build amps, who build pedals, who sometimes have to live on credit just to keep themselves afloat.
Yeah.
And then when we get to those numbers later, we have to keep that in the back of our mind. They're just not like super irresponsible, spending money, and they bought yachts and they got like, cocaine on the table here, and we're doing so much money and we're just living this, free lifestyle where we don't give a shit. That's not the truth. A lot of them are trying to make it by, and they're trying everything they can to keep the music industry going. And it's not just the retailers that are suffering, it's also the builders. So we have to keep that in mind as we go and look at the new numbers.
And the other thing that, and yeah, you're 100% right. So a lot of these stores, they make a lot of money with something they call house brands. So essentially, they're working together with OEM companies, either in Asia, sometimes even local builders or something. And obviously, because there's no way to compare those with maybe the house brand of another retailer, and if they're really good, that margin is significantly higher. And if you look at Thomann, for example, they have kind of almost perfectionized that house brand thing, where Harley Benton is now a super established brand in Europe, and also since like a year or something in the US. And people love that stuff. People love that stuff. The guitars are well made, and they have to. The margin has to be amazing on that. So it kind of balances the shitty margins you'll get from Yamaha, Fender, Gibson, and all the other companies, where you're competing, with thousands of other sellers, like for the best price. And yeah, maybe you can make them the best price, but then you also have less in the pocket. So that's one thing. And then the other thing you said, if we look at revenue, and we look at, I just pulled up the list. You look at Guitar Center and you look at like, wow, 2.28 billion in revenue. But then if you look down further, you're like, okay, but you also have 11,500 employees in 564 locations.
Yep.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know how much that costs to maintain. Employees, the locations, electricity, and I mean, not all of those 500 something locations are superstores. Some of them are rather small.
Yep.
But still, you have to pay people, and you have to pay electricity. Maintain the store and whatnot. You have to buy new inventory. So, maybe that's why Thomann, in comparison, is a very healthy operation, because it's 1.7 something billion. It's 1,700 employees in one location. Very centralized.
Yeah.
All right. Let me stop this presentation, and we'll go on to the one that's a bit heavier, in my opinion. Hold on. Ta-da! Gonna hide this. So, this is the Q2 2024 retail sales report for the US. And it's, in comparison to the other issue that we were looking at, it's only US, but since the US is still the biggest market in MI, and a lot of the things that happen in the US can be somewhat transposed to, what's happening in other parts of the world, we can take it for granted, that, and I mean, we see the signs, stores closing down all over the place.
Yep.
And by the way, I in the beginning, I said I had a subscription to that up until recently. If anyone from Music Trades is listening in on this, or anyone knows someone at Music Trades, if you want to sponsor a small but growing podcast with a subscription to Music Trades so we can discuss, industry insights, and hit me up.
Shameless.
Shameless. All right. Industry sales declined 5.2% in second quarter. So now we're talking. We've passed 2023. We've seen, there's been a lot of shifts, especially with, smaller businesses, and the tree kind of got really thin on the lower end. And we're now in 2024, and things do not seem to look up, really. And as I said in the beginning, they talk to a lot of stores and try to get feedback on what their current situation is. And some of the people actually, were pretty detailed with their insights. And I'd like to read that quote. We hear it every day in our store. Customers continue to make tough choices with their budgets, trading down in music gear while still prioritizing services and experience like travel. Noted the dealer from Atlanta, Georgia. Across the board, dealers report that higher-end purchases requiring financing have suffered the most. It doesn't matter if it's free 18-month financing or 90-day same as cash. Customers are not biting on finance offers like they used to. This is killing our grand piano business, remarked a retailer from Richmond, Virginia. Sales of fretted instruments dropped 8.8% in the second quarter, falling to 194 million compared to 212 last year. This downward trend has now continued for 9 consecutive quarters, following a historic 21.5% surge in the first quarter of 2022. Dealers point to a host of factors from products bought during COVID that are flooding Reverb and Facebook Marketplace to a general market malaise that is keeping customers from making purchases. Bottom line for me, I've never seen the guitar market, both electric and acoustic, be this far off. And for my ukuleles, they're almost non-existent these days, observed a dealer from Orlando, Florida. The Sam Ash bankruptcy is a big wake-up call for all independent dealers. We are losing the low-end business to Amazon, Sweetwater continues to expand, and we're now competing with our own manufacturers. Put it all together, and the market is incredibly demanding, noted a music retailer from Dallas.
He said a few things that probably should be unpacked.
Yes.
As to how ferocious the competition has become just to keep making money. So he's saying how they're some of the companies now are selling their own stuff online.
Yes.
So that means that if we take the old model, it was basically, I have this product, I don't have the customers, but you have the customers. They can come to you. So you will sell these things. I will sell you this many, but I will reduce the price. This way you have a profit margin. And we keep going this way back and forth, and I replenish your store whenever you need. But now these companies that are making these products are saying, why should I go to you when I can have a website built and I can just sell directly to the people?
Yes.
So that means that all the mom and pop shops now have Sweetwater, Thomann, and, they were talking about Amazon. Who needs to go to a store if everyone can accommodate you from the comfort of your own home?
Yes.
So the purchasing of people has become very different than what it used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Exactly. 100%. And I think this is one of the most crucial issues right now. The situation is very simple. A lot of these manufacturers, a lot of these brands, their warehouses are full as well. You know, their warehouses are full of guitars that they have produced because they thought, COVID and golden years are ahead. No, we just had a pandemic and people were forced to stay inside and chose to spend their money on stuff.
Yeah,
that's what happened. But if we look at the grand scheme, so Gibson is selling direct to not all of their stuff, but a lot of their stuff they're selling direct. They're selling on Reverb, so they're selling B stocks and some what was it? B stocks refurbished. They're also selling prototypes. Those go fast because if you can get a prototype of something, that has a different value. Yeah. Fender is selling direct. Last year during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, they actually undercut the prices of some of their retailers, which is absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Yamaha sells direct. Behringer uses Amazon to sell direct, and then they work with a few big retailers, just to have a better spread of their product.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys, and we haven't even started with the, pro audio / lifestyle guys. I mean, Sennheiser sells direct, Neumann sells direct. The list goes on and on and on because these guys see, and this is the 2018 scenario. The sales are declining. We need more channels. So why not create our own? And that's what they did.
Pedal companies do that too. I mean, you can buy direct from JHS. You can buy directly from Wampler. I mean, that's another option. Do they sell as much as they would do company to company as opposed to company to the customer? I don't know. So that would be probably, maybe it's trickles of money instead of being like financially viable to move in that direction exclusively.
Yes.
But what I do wonder is, how much do you have to bleed out financially that you have to pivot everything you do and just always adapt and keep trying new models all the time just to stay afloat? And this is what we're seeing from everything, all the data that you're showing us today. That's what it seems to be indicating, is that some people have found a model that seems to be sustainable and profitable in this economy, while others are going by the wayside. And we're seeing, like, the data, you're bringing receipts right now. We see that there's a massive decline, and things like those. Yeah, go ahead.
No, please finish.
Yeah. So what I was going to get to is that sometimes we look at the numbers, but we need to break down the numbers into more relatable things where we understand what it's like to be someone who produces pedals, amps, guitars, sends it out to companies, what it means for them financially, how much they have to invest, not only in time, but also in money. And then for the person that's responsible for selling this stuff, what's the profit margin? What's their reality? And we often don't see that side. So when you have big companies, like we were talking about Fernandez, that shut down, a company like that became kind of forgotten by most people, but at a certain point, they were big, they were doing really well, and it seems like the adaptability of companies is ever shifting now, and so much quicker than it was before. You can't foresee what it's going to be like in 2 years from now, much less 2 months from now. Like, you can't really anticipate what's coming financially, because things are always moving around. New technologies come in, people's habits change. You have people that were 10 years old a few years ago, but now they're 20 and now they're purchasing, and their philosophy and their values are completely different, and their habits in purchasing might be very different too. So it's all this stuff we have to think about.
Yes, exactly. And I think one of the issues is, and it's very important to point that out, all of the data we're looking at, whether it was the 2023 sort of international overview or this one, it doesn't include the direct to customer business of companies, whether it's a small pedal company or if it's a large, multi-billion operation like Yamaha or Fender, because obviously they're not going to share their numbers. Because maybe if they would, we would find it would be kind of, embarrassing.
Yeah.
So, and it goes into detail here. So fretted instruments, and that includes acoustic electric guitars and ukuleles. Q2 sales were 8.8% lower than the previous year. And what else can we see? Q2 sales have decreased 9.5% compared to the same quarter 5 years ago. Definitely a lot. Online sales accounted for 45% of sales in the second quarter compared to 44% in the first quarter. That's not a huge difference. So,
no.
And we can see, and that's something that the other report also kind of highlighted, 55% of that revenue is done online because fretted instrument, it's pretty easy to ship. It's pretty easy to return. But yeah, if you look at the 5-year comparison, it's going down. It's going down. And if you think this looks bad, let me get one page. This is amplifiers, man.
Wow.
This is amplifiers. It's 9.3% lower than the previous year. Decrease over the past 5 years is 17.7%, which is, absolutely insane. And if you look at the 5-year comparison, like the curve downwards even steeper. Interestingly, the percentage of online versus in-store is pretty much equal to fretted instruments. So apparently, shipping amps has become more easy than it used to. I remember packing amps myself. Terrible.
I did that with the move here. I had to do everything because the movers didn't know how to do it. And it's a lot of work. But there's another thing. So what I like to do whenever you're going over the numbers is try to humanize and actualize what's going on so we can interpret this data differently. So amplifier sales are going down. There's a few things that I think the reality of musicians is completely different now than it used to be. Quiet stage, right? So people can't bring... Yeah, home recording. You have tools now where you have something like the Kemper or the Quad Cortex, where you have pretty much every amp you could think of. And for someone who plays at home, who isn't a professional, why would they buy the most expensive amp they could ever think of that they can never, ever crank because they live in an apartment or they live at home, they own their own homes, but their family cannot, endure a loud amp and their shitty playing for 2 hours. So you put on some headphones, you go with the Kemper or whatever digital modeler you're using, and all of a sudden you have this plethora of amplifiers and effects and all this stuff. This new generation is not as driven by tube amps as maybe the older folks are. So that could explain in part why it has decreased by 17.7%, because now there's new players coming in, and even some of the older players may be going like, dude, I got all these amps, I need money, maybe I just get a Kemper, sell all my shit, use the profit for going on vacation, and I'm just going to play with a Kemper. No one makes the fucking difference. And quiet stages when I have to go play, I can't bring my tube amp. It's a pain in the ass. I'm getting old. My back hurts. You see what I mean? It's like you compile all these things and they get compounded and you go, fuck it. I'm just going to sell the tube amps. I'm just going to keep a modeler. That is it.
However,
so who need...
Yeah, well, however,
I will.
No. I'm not even talking about the two of us, because we're on the other end of that spectrum. I appreciate what some of those digital products out there have done and accomplished over the years. I've been an Axifax user myself for quite some time, because especially the effects section was just bonkers. Was absolutely amazing, and way easier to handle and to maneuver than a stupid Eventide Eclipse. So, but some companies, especially the companies that kind of bridge the gap between digital or some of the advantages that, IR loaders have. If I look at what Boutique Amp Distribution is doing with some of the Friedman products, with the Astro from Soldano, or the new Synergy amp, where they implement stuff, so you can play that in a band context. It's going to work, it's going to be loud enough, but you can play it at home as well, and you can play it with, and with pretty amazing sounding IRs. So those companies are actually growing their business right now, whereas all the other companies that just never changed, their product line or kind of adapted to some sort of contemporary needs, they're probably in that list, going down, declining.
No doubt.
Probably. And if you think it couldn't get any worse, let me go another page down. Oh, this is fun. Sound reinforcement products. So that includes power amp speakers, enclosures, microphones, mixers, signal processing, DJ gear, and related products. So everything that that you need to, live concert and everything, or for like huge festivals or discotheque or whatever. And I have a little bit of insight into that because a friend of mine works in the industry of, he's in a rental company, so they rent out that stuff, for festivals like line arrays and everything. And he said just before the pandemic started, they made purchases. They kind of updated their entire lineup, everything that they have to the newest standard. Then the pandemic came, no concerts, so they were like they were struggling to stay alive because they didn't have any income, nothing. No one was renting out stuff. And when everything started with concerts again, obviously, they kind of recovered and everything, but there's no need to buy new stuff because they've just updated the stuff just before the pandemic hit. So 6.7 lower than the previous year does not sound a lot, but if you look at the 5-year comparison, that curve looks terrible.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, 71% of that stuff is bought online, which is fascinating. I mean, some of those PA systems are terribly heavy.
But again, the whole sound when it comes to home recording or live, a lot of it is done through research. And from my experience, you're going to research. Let's say you want to do home recording, right? And you're like, I've never done home recording. I don't know what to do. How do I get my guitar into my computer? Oh, you need a sound card or you need an audio interface. So then you look it up. Oh, wow, there's this little red box here. It doesn't sell for a whole lot. And I've seen a bunch of YouTubers with it. I'm going to buy that one. Microphone. You get yourself an SM57. Do you really need another microphone? No, you can probably do everything you need with that one mic. So this one person that might have delved into the home recording and went down the rabbit hole now finds out that you don't need all the analog stuff because if you want a compressor, you can have a plugin. Yeah. Plugins don't require a music store to sell it. You can buy it directly online. So you can have all these fucking plugins. That's without counting like people who are giving plugins away for free. So someone like that, you cannot get them in and say, okay, he's going to keep buying microphones and audio interfaces and compressors and EQs and preamps. No, that person is done. That's all they needed. They're never going to go any deeper. And they got a computer filled with demos that no one's ever going to hear. That's it. The other person who does live sound, they're going to read that, hey, I'm going to do A-OK with a little mixer that I bought from Thomann, the T-Bone or whatever it's called. I'm going to have Behringer PAs, maybe a couple microphones I bought, like the T-Bone microphone or whatever. And that's it, man. I'm all in, $500. I can go, do live sound for a bunch of people. They're not going to buy the line arrays. They're not going to do that. That person has that gear, and they're just going to keep buying the cheap shit because they make way more money by having really cheap gear and not having to reinvest all the time. And then the big companies, like you were saying, yeah, okay, maybe you do the sound at this venue for, all the big acts that come through your town, but do you always need the latest and greatest piece of gear if your front of house engineer is like, I know this gear, stop fucking messing with it. It's dialed in now. Don't get anything else. We're good. It's not broken. If it's broken, I know how to fix it. That's it.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing. A lot of these guys, especially the old school guys that do sound at a venue, they're also very good technicians. So if something's broken, they get the replacement part. Like if one of the high frequency horns is broken, they take it out, they get a replacement part, they screw the new one in, done.
Yep.
So what else do we have? Electronic music products includes synthesizers, production centers, controllers, and electronic drums. Not so terrible. So 5% lower. The 5-year curve doesn't look as terrible. What's interesting is 68% of that stuff online. Again.
Yeah.
Percussion products 5.5% lower. 70% of it in store. Includes drum sets, hardware, cymbals, educational percussion, drum heads, and sticks. That's interesting. I mean, I know that a drum set is kind of large, but I think the reason why most of the people buy it in store is if they ship it to you, you have to do everything and set it up and tune the heads and everything, and that's a very tedious process. If you don't know what you're doing, it's impossible to get it right. So I guess that's why people go into the store. It's all set up, and they put it in the car. Everything is in bags or even cases, and then they just build it. Put it together in the session room, and they're done. So that might be the reason why this is something that is preferred to buy in store. Recording products 5.8% lower. Includes recording and sequencing software. Oh, that includes software. Okay. Plugins, computer music hardware, and handheld recorders. That doesn't look too bad. If I look at the numbers, and that stuff is for the most part sold online. That makes sense. Printed music. I don't know if that's interesting. I'm not sure. And it's only 1.5% lower than the previous year. Printed music. That's something that kind of, I find it interesting that that's still existing in the numbers that it exists, because I mean, with everybody teaching through YouTube or through their own little platform, I find it interesting.
Maybe that's still a medium for music teachers. So perhaps music teachers are still going through like books, and you just put it there and you can read the same pages instead of being on iPads or whatever. So maybe that's why there's still a market for printed music, but I imagine that it's not a big piece of the pie if you look at the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. What else do we have? Accessories 1.5% lower. Well, I mean, everybody needs strings. Everybody needs drumsticks. Everybody needs, a new strap now and then. People change pickups. Again, not really interesting to look into this, because it's, to me, that's an ongoing sort of sector, right?
Yeah.
School music. What is school music? Woodwinds, brass winds, and bowed string instruments. Q2 sales were 0.7% higher than the previous year. That's nice.
Not a big thing, but at least it's up.
Let's go to another low. Grand pianos. I mean, but yeah, that's kind of obvious, right? Yeah. I mean, 10.5% lower than the previous year. Wow. Oof. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, grand pianos is like a thing. You buy one, and then you have one, and you usually keep it until the end of times, right? It's not like, oh, they have a newer model, I gotta get that, you know?
No, exactly. And the other thing too with pianos is that when you're looking at, let's say, a grand piano, you're looking at the price of that piano, and you're going, $10,000. Oh my God, that must be like the best piano. No, dude,
there's nothing.
It's like beginner bullshit. You know, it's like,
yeah,
it's not that great. And what people who don't play any instrument don't realize is that you have to get movers to move that piano. And the moment you move it, it goes out of tune. So now you have to hire someone to come and tune your piano for you.
And those guys are taking money, man. It's
yeah, no, I mean, they got special ears. They know what they're doing, and you're not going to get your brother-in-law who plays a bit of guitar to tune your grand piano. And then when it's in your house, well, you can't have it in an apartment, so you need to be a homeowner at least, and you have to have a room that can accommodate that piano.
Exactly.
So, and then what happens, and no one ever talks about this, but we should. How many free pianos do you see on, let's say, Facebook Marketplace? Piano is free, must pick it up. I'm not touching it. So you paid a fuck ton of money for that piano, and then at the end, you're just giving it away and nobody wants it. Sound investment? Unless you're a piano player, maybe not.
No, maybe not. Or, well, maybe if it's something special, it has a certain resale value, you know,
like a Steinway and
Steinway, exactly, like a Steinway or something.
Yeah.
Or a Schimmel, you know, one of those. But it looks like vertical pianos are around the same number, minus 12.6. Digital pianos, 5.7 lower. It's a different category, but still. Portable keyboards. What the hell are portable keyboards? The ones that children use? I would assume that. Or maybe controllers, you know, controllers.
Oh, maybe.
6.5% lower. Institutional organs. What? What, for a church?
I would assume, yeah.
We are getting to places here that I don't think we have any people listening to this that, oh, sure, I play an institutional organ.
You never know.
Every day at home. I have one installed in my basement.
I don't live in a home. I live in an institution, and I have an institutional organ. To me, that sounds like the liver of like some politician. Like, oh, we had to remove his institutional organ.
Or the person is in a mental institution. That might be. And I play the institutional organ every day.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Right after my drugs kick in.
Yeah, exactly.
So here is a total sum of things, kind of what it said in the beginning. So it's 5.2% down. The curve doesn't look good, and it kind of reflects of what we saw in the other report. You know, where you had like 2020 was kind of a year that what are we going to do? How long is this going to last? And it really unfolded to like the max, more towards the end of the year. I would say like fall was at least here. We had like a peak of shutdown after shutdown after lockdown, whatnot. And then 2021, boom, everybody's spending money on shit. Yeah. So, yeah. And again, just as a reminder, it says in the note, this data does not include manufacturer direct-to-consumer sales, which now account for approximately 10% of the total industry volume. Dealers responding to the second quarter survey generated sales of more than 1.8 billion in 2023 and accounted for 20% of total industry sales that year. So, in essence, we have a problem.
We do, and reading sometimes the graphs and the data, there's some people who are like that you will lose them with numbers. So that's why I'm trying to bring more context that people can relate to, because sometimes it's really hard to interpret hard data and just
let's shut this down so we don't have to look at it anymore.
So sometimes having the foresight of what that means in the coming years, sometimes you have to pull data from other sources. So not that long ago, my daughter showed me this thing about how kids are less and less interested by music. So there's a devaluation of music. So less young people are picking up instruments. Less young people are being inspired by music so that they can create their own music using instruments. A lot of them are doing it via a computer. Sometimes that's a normal evolution and it's a generational thing. Sometimes it will pass. Sometimes, like, look, there was a time where guitar wasn't the big thing. It was actually accordions, and everyone loved accordions, and accordions used to sell a lot. And that changed. Rock music came along, completely changed the landscape. And nowadays, a lot of kids, they listen to, so many styles of music, but they're not as inspired to pick up an instrument listening to this music. They would rather build a playlist and, listen to music and do all this multitasking stuff, which is very different than, let's say, you and I's education when we were coming up. I remember locking myself away in my room, listening to music, trying to pick up music by ear. I'd have a shitty guitar that I would play to death. And I was dreaming of getting a white Les Paul like Randy Rhoads. And I had all this stuff. But kids today have so many things dividing their attention that I think committing to an instrument might be, in the foreseeable future, not that viable. So all these people in the industry may have to adapt to the next generation that's coming up, and they may have to adapt really quickly, or else these numbers that are gradually coming down may plummet really, really fast, because we're not getting younger, and eventually, when we're not there, who the hell is going to pick up these instruments and keep playing and be inspired to buy new ones?
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, Fender was very, very keen to sort of bring traction to their play environment, where you have like online courses, and essentially instructors teach you how to play music, how to play your favorite songs. And apparently the system that they've set up was also very comprehensive. And for a long time, people in the industry were like, why are you doing this? This has to be, a big investment, to set the website up and to create the videos. It has to be like hours of work. Yeah. And a spokesperson at Fender said, well, the thing is that, this industry kind of works in cycles.
Yeah.
And we as a company, we cannot wait another 7 years before the next generation eventually picks up an instrument. We have to sort of generate the interest, and we have to create that next generation in order to, to keep selling, keep making money selling guitars. Now, I don't know if that's something that has worked out for them. I'm not sure, but it's a good indicator to see what needs to be done in order to motivate people to pick up an instrument. And yeah, I mean, musical tastes have changed. The consumption of music has changed so much, from sitting down, putting on a vinyl on the player and listening to an album from beginning to end, or even with a CD. I mean, yeah, you could skip with the CD, but
Yeah.
a lot of people would just put in the CD and, the album was running. And nowadays, you said the word, it's playlists, or if you're on Spotify and you listen to an artist, or you listen to one song of an artist, then sometimes you'll get another song of that artist, but then it skips to a different artist with the same style, with a similar style, and it's almost like listening to radio in a way, but there's so much stuff out there, it's impossible to keep up.
It is impossible to keep up. There's too many distractions, there's too many choices, and at the same time, the culture has changed, and all this industry that we're talking about was based on the culture, and the culture is shifting, and the industry is not adapting well to that shift in culture. One example, just to make it more tangible, is this concept of the kid sitting at home watching MTV, and every person on TV has long hair, spandex, they're playing guitars and drums and bass, and they're playing in front of screaming fans, and you have that one little boy or little girl going, that's what I want to do. And then all of a sudden, that same kid is listening to an album because that's all they have. They have the one album, and that one album becomes pivotal for them, and they're like, oh, wow, this guitar player is amazing. I want to be like this guitar player. Starts buying guitar magazines because there's no internet at that point. So they buy a guitar magazine and get to find out that this guitar player is a guy or a girl just like them. They're playing this specific guitar, and now they're like, I want to play guitar, and I want to have that same guitar. I want to have the same thing. And now you've just grown a subculture of young people who want to become musician, and they want to influence other people. They want to be able to put themselves out there, but they have to get there through hard work. Whereas nowadays, you can make electronic music, you can grab your iPhone and put yourself on Twitch, on YouTube, on anything, and just say, listen to my new song. You press play on your keyboard, and there you go. Here's a song that took me a week to work on, and there you go. I'm going to release another one next week, and another one the week after that. And it becomes so saturated with great music and shitty music all at the same time. Nothing's getting curated the normal way, where people go, that's bullshit. I hate that. No, it gets thrown in there. And then when you sit with your kids and you ask them, what's your favorite band? I don't have a favorite band. I have a favorite song. Okay. Who is it from? I think it's Billie Eilish. Oh, no, wait a minute. It could be Dua Lipa. Let me check on my phone. They don't know the name of the people singing the songs. They don't know anything about them except that one song that's in the playlist. Yeah. So it's not a fault. It's not a positive or a negative. It's just a shift in culture. Meaning if their attention span isn't that great, if they're not really delving into the artists and getting to find out who they are, how they got started, the whole thing, maybe we're not cultivating young up-and-coming musicians just because the culture has completely shifted. So all these great companies making great gear, will they disappear because there's no more interest? Because it's not the one guitar player that comes in on Instagram that's 10 years old and is shredding like a motherfucker. They might not be inspiring anyone because someone's going to go, oh, wow, that's so cool. Like, next. What's the kid's name? Does that kid write music? Is that kid going on tour with a band? Don't know. I liked it, and I just moved on to the next thing where there's a cute cat. And
now afterwards, you're not going to remember that you even watched the video. So
no, sometimes sometimes what happens is that you might see the same video again and you go, oh wow, and then you look, oh wow, I liked this before. I don't remember liking this video. Well, I guess I'll like it again.
It's true. It's true. 100%. Yeah. I think we can end this episode now. We have looked at some data that is in parts pretty shocking.
Yeah.
And since it's the industry I've been working in almost my entire life. It's kind of sad to see, but it's not like this hasn't happened before. We've had these, ups and downs.
Yep.
At least in all the time that I've been working in this industry. So I think at some point things are going to go up again, but the how to do that becomes significantly more difficult. So
definitely,
we'll see how that works out. If you have any questions about any of the magazine issues that we talked about, leave a comment. If you have made observations on your own, maybe you also have a certain view or even overview on the industry, let us know in the comments. And that's it for this week from us. And we'll see you with the next episode next week, where I can tell you almost a little bit. We will talk about YouTube. Specifically, we're going to talk about guitar YouTube and it becoming a little bit absurd in a way. Just a little teaser.
Yep.
Thank you guys for listening, for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon. Doesn't cost anything. Makes us happy, makes us able to create more content. And until the next time, we salute you.
Cheers.
Cheers.